DJI waited 26 hours after Insta360 finished its launch, walked on stage, and priced its new 360 camera about $200 under the competition. Then it opened its American store and served a 404 page. That is the entire story of the Osmo 362, compressed into a single day, a camera engineered to answer every complaint about the first generation, sold in a market you might not live in. So this is not a hype video, this is a complaint list. The original Osmo 360 had a short, loud list of things owners hated about it. DJI went down that list one item at a time, and I am here to check its work. Every fix gets verified, every claim gets read twice, and the one place DJI quietly went backwards gets a section of its own. The fixes are real, so is the fine print. Complaint number 1, and it was not close. The first Osmo 360 fixed its lenses in place, so a scratch on either face meant a service ticket or a dead camera, and 360 cameras wear their glass on the outside with nowhere to hide it. The Osmo 362 ships user replaceable lenses on both faces, finished with an ion sputtered coating. DJI says withstood 2,000 rubs from steel wool in lab testing without measurable damage to image quality. That one change reshapes who this camera is for. Mount the first generation on a helmet or a tank bag, and every ride was a gamble on the front element. Mount this one and a bad afternoon costs you a lens instead of a camera, which is the whole difference between gear you protect and gear you use. DJI also gave one of the 4 microphones a windproof design, so wind roar stops eating your audio the second you pick up speed. Physically, almost nothing else moved. The body measures 61 by 36.3 by 81 millimeters and weighs 183 grams, so placed beside the original, the only visible tell is an NFC logo. That NFC chip is a genuine convenience win, waking the camera and pairing it with DJI Mimo on a single tap, and a new Osmo dual-direction quick-release swaps mounting orientation without unscrewing anything. This is a repair job with a facelift rather than a redesign, and DJI is not pretending otherwise. Complaint number 2 was frame rate, and DJI answered it with the loudest number on the box. The Osmo 362 records native 360 video at 7,680 by 3,840 pixels, running from 24 all the way to 60 frames per second, up from a 50 frame ceiling on the original. Bitrate climbs from about 170 megabits per second to 220, roughly 29% more data every second, which shows up in leaves, water, crowds, and anything else that shreds a compressed file. Slow motion took the bigger jump. Panorama mode now records 4K at 240 frames per second, against 4K 100 before, and DJI Studio layers AI frame interpolation on top, producing output DJI describes as equivalent to cropped 8K 480. Capture at 4K 240, and you have up to 64 times slow motion available afterwards, which turns a 2-second wipeout into half a minute of usable footage. Time-lapse moved up to 16K panoramic frames, running as high as 600 megabits per second, and an optional Osmo Vortex rotating handle pushes 8K capture to 120 frames per second for time-freeze shots. The catch on all of it is workflow, because the highest-end files only export through DJI Studio on a computer, so a phone-first creator never touches the modes the marketing leads with. Stabilization runs Rocksteady 3.0 and Horizon Steady, though Horizon Steady only applies to standard 16:9 flat video up to 60 frames per second when you are in single lens mode. Complaint number 3 was low light, and this is where reading the fine print pays you back. The Osmo 362 keeps the square 1/1.1-inch CMOS pair, 2.4 micron pixels, and f1.9 lenses, with a square design. DJI says raises sensor utilization by 25% against a conventional 4:3 sensor. ISO runs from 100 to 51,200, and the front and rear lenses now expose independently, so a blown sky behind you stops destroying the shot in front of you. The headline claim is 14.5 stops of dynamic range, up from 13.5 on the original, which DJI describes as double the brightness tolerance of the last generation. AI SuperNight 2.0 now runs all the way up at 8K 60 rather than being restricted to slower modes, so clean night footage no longer costs you resolution or frame rate to get. And here is the fine print nobody read out loud. That 14.5 stop figure is the camera's maximum measured dynamic range under DJI's own testing conditions. D-Log-M, the profile you reach for when you plan to grade, is still rated at 13.5 stops, sitting exactly where the first generation sat. So if you shoot flat and color grade everything, the dynamic range upgrade is smaller than the number on the box implies. If you shoot standard profile and post straight from the camera, you see more of it. Same camera, two different truths, depending entirely on how you work. Complaint number 4 came from photographers, and DJI fixed the one thing that mattered most. The Osmo 362 now shoots RAW, so panoramic stills arrive as editable files instead of baked JPGs with the camera's opinion already applied and unremovable. Resolution stayed at 120 megapixels for 360 photos, which was already the highest figure in the category, and single-lens stills land at 30.72 megapixels. The new addition is HDR panoramic capture at that full 120 megapixel resolution. For anyone shooting real estate walkthroughs, virtual tours, or interiors with windows in frame, RAW plus HDR plus 120 megapixels is the reason to pick this camera over a rival, because it stops forcing the choice between a blown window and a black room. 10-bit color runs across every video format too, although D-Log-M is unavailable in photo, time-lapse, and endurance modes. The trade-off is what RAW always costs you. Those files are enormous. They need real editing software rather than a phone app, and panoramic stitching still has to happen before you see a finished frame. Minimum stitching distance sits at 75 centimeters, roughly 30 inches, stretching to a full meter with the waterproof case on underwater, so anything closer than an arm's length to the body lands in the seam. Shooting a tight interior corner or a handlebar mount means planning around that number, rather than discovering it in post. Storage is where the Osmo 362 quietly wins its category. 128 gigabytes sit on board with 105 usable, plus a micro SD slot taking cards up to 1 terabyte, which means you leave the house with more than double the internal capacity of the closest rival and a card slot behind it. 8K footage eats roughly a gigabyte a minute, so that gap becomes a whole extra shooting session before you go hunting for a card reader. Battery moved from 1,950 mAh to 2,150, about 10% more capacity, still rated near 100 minutes of continuous 8K 30 recording under DJI's test conditions. Fast charging reaches 80% in 22 minutes on a 30-watt charger. An optional battery extension rod adds up to 180 minutes on top of that, and the camera operates from -20 to 45 degrees Celsius. Waterproofing holds at IP68 to 10 meters bare, or 50 meters with the separate invisible waterproof case. Where DJI pulls ahead on daily use is the ecosystem you might already own. Osmo audio integration lets DJI microphones and remotes connect straight to the camera with no receiver clipped to your body. Spotlight Follow locks onto a subject inside the sphere and exports a subject-tracked flat 4K file through Mimo or DJI Studio, skipping the reframing pass entirely. Gesture and voice commands handle hands-free starts, which matters a lot when the camera is bolted to a motorcycle and both your hands are busy. Price is the argument DJI wants you to have. The Osmo 362 opened in China at 3,299 yuan, around $460, with a second package at 3,999 yuan, while Hong Kong listings put the standard bundle near $499 and the adventure combo around $599. Against a rival asking $699.99, DJI's fully loaded combo undercuts the competition's bare camera by $100. Availability is the argument DJI would rather you skipped. The camera launched in China only on August 13th, and the American store returned a 404-page minutes after the reveal, with no US price and no US date listed anywhere. That happened despite the Osmo 362 clearing its FCC equipment authorization on December 21st of 2025, one day before the covered list cutoff froze new approvals for DJI hardware. The Osmo Pocket 4P followed the same pattern and reached international markets around 6 weeks after its China debut, which puts a wider rollout near the end of September for everyone outside America. Then there is the downgrade nobody put in a headline. Single lens mode on the Osmo 362 is listed at 4K 60, where the first generation delivered 5K 60. DJI raised the panoramic ceiling and quietly lowered the mode you switch to when you want a normal wide action shot. If 90% of your shooting is stitched 360 footage, ignore it completely. If you flip to single lens regularly, you are buying a newer camera that shoots worse in a mode you use every week. Buy the Osmo 362 if you own DJI microphones or mounts, shoot long days where storage runs out before battery does, need RAW and HDR panoramic stills, or want 8K 60 for the lowest price anyone is charging. Skip it if you shoot single lens often because that mode went backwards. Wait if you are outside China, since September is the realistic window. And if you are in America, you are not buying anything yet. So tell me in the comments, does a $200 saving matter if the camera never ships to you?